I'm here with Jeremy, my weather routing expert. I was in touch with him while I was rowing across this year. And while we are doing this video, I'd like to explain somewhat what happened on my route. What are the regular tendencies? Why am I leaving this time of the year versus fall? And kind of explain overall the logistics of my trip and the weather that occurred during my journey. So I guess we could start with maybe the first trip, the first try that happened early on in May 26th when I left from Manhattan, and kind of what happened weather-wise on that route. If Jeremy could take over and explain a little bit what happened there. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Milan. Yeah, so with the first attempt there coming out of New York Harbor, there were some adverse tidal currents to deal with as well that prevented you from really getting out. When the day that we thought we'd be able to get you out of there, they finally were able to. You were able to time it to kind of get out of the harbor, but then we had a lot of strong southerly winds and swells that came up there. So with that, and the way the coastline is of Long Island, that there's just not much sea room. And it was really difficult to head more, offshore. So those southwesterly winds just kept creeping you closer and closer to the coast of Long Island, even when you got out there. So
pretty much,
it just wasn't any time to get you farther east or east-southeast to get you some space. So I think geography played, a role too. You just have this big obstacle, a big landmass to the north, and when the waves and the winds are pushing you in one direction, it's just very difficult to counteract that. And then, thankfully, at least it was a beach and not rock, so that was good. At least I didn't have to come ashore.
Absolutely. It just shows you how powerful and strong the weather really is. And, just from rowing and the point of experience that it's a definitely big or almost a humbling experience and big respect, and learning curve as well, because the anchor, perhaps if I did have, better anchor, maybe longer rope, I could possibly hang on that land and keep my ground until this weather passed, but I wasn't able to, and it just pushed me with the anchor all the way to the coast. So, it happened. And so, all right, so we kind of know what weather-wise, what happened on that first route. And then we were waiting again. I decided, for obvious reason, first, at that point, I was losing time, and I decided to leave from Montauk the second time around, because not only that I cut off the distance of the whole, basically, Long Island to be rowing again from Manhattan or even mid Long Island, but and really that was probably the main reason. I just wanted to get a little bit closer, and I felt from the first experience that if I avoid the land, and I was really kind of concerned about just the south shore of Long Island at the point. So that's why we chose Montauk, and it actually, the start and everything, based on what we took into equation, because I needed a very mild weather coming from the north, so I could actually leave the Montauk Lake Harbor and kind of go around south again, and so the weather had to be just right for that little maneuver around the north shore of Long Island, and then going down towards, Nantucket, so to speak. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, and then, to that little bit more eastward does at least cut off some of that geography there too.
Oh, yeah.
But then there's still some more of those other land masses out there.
I did have little difficult weather that once I got closer to Nantucket, I was on anchor again for 2-3 days. And one of the reasons was, first, I couldn't go straight east. And you can probably explain why not, right? If you don't mind.
Yeah, so it was just hard because we're having these kind of southwesterly swells and some southeasterly swells out there. So those are all kind of opposing you as you're trying to head east. What we would want to have is west and northwesterly winds and seas to kind of push you and try to get you farther offshore, but we just weren't getting them. Just a strong Bermuda high out there to the south high pressure area just kept these southwesterly winds going. along with some southeasterly swells out there and several frontal passages that just weren't doing much in terms of giving us any northwesterly winds. And that just really prevented you from trying to be able to row most east, because trying to push you more northeast or north as well.
And from the position that I was actually kind of coming from the north, I felt like I was naturally closer to Nantucket. So therefore, when I actually entered the waters going east, I was pretty much going or heading straight for the shoals, which me, very inexperienced in that sense, so shame on me, but you guys rightfully told me that that's a place to completely avoid, right? Because the shallow area, and I wouldn't want to be there or even row across it, because if any bad weather would come across there, I would get hit real bad. So that's why I kind of had to go from north instead of straight east where I was, or from the location where I was. I had to pretty much go almost straight south or slightly southeast to avoid it completely from the south. And then I was able to continue east once I cleared those shoals. So that was, another challenge that kind of added into my route, and it somewhat delayed me because of the waiting.
That's right. Yeah, and with the Nantucket shoals too, it's an area where there's all these shipping sandbars. Very few vessels cross it. There's been lots of shipwrecks there. So the sandbars may not come to the surface. Just all these different, all shipping sands underneath there, and different currents, and the waves going against it. It's just not a very safe place. So everybody pretty much avoids that area. But it is a large area too, so you have to kind of go down and down below it to get, and not get pushed back into it. So that's the next challenge with all the southerly winds and seas that we had out there.
Yeah, definitely. And it was, I almost felt like, every step, every day, I was kind of shooting for certain benchmark, and was kind of checking off the last obstacle that I had to go through as I was coming. Was the Nantucket shoals. Once I kind of cleared it, it was a one thing behind me, and then I was trying to head towards the continental shelves and really clear the land overall, continental America, really, to try to head as east as possible could. So if any bad current would try to push me up north, I would clear it. So my incentive at that time was really just to kind of keep headed straight east, and as far as possible once I cleared the shoals. But unfortunately, that's where the weather was kind of working against me. And this is I guess, or here is where I would needed or wanted to explain what would be normal tendency of the weather this time of the year versus what occurred on my route, and why it was this difficult, and what it is that really happened to me out there.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting setup this year too. The Bermuda high has been very persistent, and that's an area of high pressure, so it's going to just circulate in a clockwise direction around that. And so that just kept these southwest and southerly winds going for you, and a lot of these fronts would try to come down and kind of stall out. It's also been a very warm period of time here, a lot of record heat going on in the northeastern U.S., so that's all those southwest winds on the north side of that high, so that just keeps those kind of directions. Once you're farther east, the southwesterlies would have been great, because then it's pushing you up to the UK, but initially you can't have them because it pushes you up into Canada. So that's been a pretty consistent feature, but then we also have tropical concerns too. So in an average year, we get one tropical system form in June or July, kind of either month. So one total by the end of July.
Right.
This year, we've already up to 6, and we had Tropical Storm Faye, which was kind of the last major system to come up there for you. And there was a potential it was going to track farther east into the Gulf of Maine. It ended up tracking closer towards New York, but it didn't matter the exact track because it did bring more southwesterly winds out there. And with the tropical season this year kind of starting off on a very, active start out there, there's also another greater likelihood that you'd see more systems out there before you'd have a time to really clear them. So even though we're in a lull now, it's it's the end of July here. But the season, once we get towards August 1st, we get more systems coming off of Africa that are stronger in the Caribbean, and they can turn more northwest and north. And that's the part you really got to be far enough east by then, because otherwise those storms can come up there, and then then you can be in real trouble if you get a Category 2 or 3 hurricane moving north and expanding and becoming eventually a non-tropical system, but becoming a huge storm to contend with, and you can't really outrun it once you're out there. So
right.
yeah, that's why.
Yes.
The sooner you go, the less chance you have of it. But then you also have other storms and fronts and gales you got to deal with too. So it's kind of a balance.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I recall very well the conversations we had on the phone, and you were bringing up, or you brought up these concerns to me. And so I feel like ultimately what made my decision, or the very last phone call we actually had while I was still not sure or deciding. And this, I remember the day, very well, because it was kind of unusual. You actually called me, and I believe it was, I think it was actually the Monday or Tuesday, perhaps Monday. And you did tell me, we're looking at it, because I was ready to call you on Tuesday just to get an update on if there is any change to the weather. And you basically called me yourself, and you said, look, we're looking at it and nothing is changing. And at that time I was still tied to the buoy up there. And you basically told me there's no changes for you in another 2 weeks. And I felt like that pretty much was a big breaking point for me, where plus these tropical storms that played into equation big time, and just for me to be safe. So I felt like, and you tell me if you had any other, but feelings about this. But as we talked about it, I felt like it was pretty much time for me to be serious and made the hard choice of going back, as you suggested, for multiple reasons. And really, number one is the safety, just not to expose myself. Besides, one thing that was, probably the most important is that there was no guarantee that in 2 weeks of me waiting, that you didn't see any changes, the weather was going to be favorable to me again. And so, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing, that we were just not seeing much of a good pattern change out there, where we could see some westerlies or northwesterlies, to come up there. And, it's part of what we do at weather routing is, a lot of times there's a lot of difficult decisions to make. And our biggest, goal is to keep everybody safe and everything like that. Of course, there's always going to be some risk in adventures like yours.
Sure.
If it was easy, everybody could do it, right?
Correct. That's right. Absolutely.
Yeah. You start to look though at, the realistic, what's it going to be for the next several weeks? Can we even get you out of there? If we could wait a few more days and things would be better, it'd be one thing. But
right.
Prolong that continuing southwesterly winds up towards Canada, and going up there just isn't really much of an option. So without seeing any real favorable, conditions, it just became our recommendation to say, well, before you try and you get farther east and then you can't really bail out easily, at least at this point, you still have some options. Go to Maine. Didn't end up being able to go off that way, but that was a possibility if we had to,
sure.
Or find a different way to head back west.
Yes.
Before you got too far east and you couldn't make that decision, and then you're all those, you can't anchor because it's deep water, and you're just getting pushed closer towards Nova Scotia.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys did a great job. You were looking after me, throughout the whole time, and I'm very grateful for that. Yeah. And I did feel very confident with your feedback and the information that was given to me that I was doing the right thing. And I think partially that's why I'm here right now, safe and sound with my boat, not being crashed, not being thrown off the coast or rocky coast of some place that probably would be over for me, and I couldn't even think about going again next year. So I think overall we kind of, unless you have anything to add, I think we kind of explained or covered of pretty much what really happened and why I had to go back.
Yep, cover the system
for the most part.
About it. Talk a little bit about how you can't go too soon because you have gales and storms in April.
Right.
But you can't go too late because you got tropics, so it's kind of a narrow window to get you far enough east without, so you get far enough east before the tropics become a concern in August. So it's kind of this narrow window.
Correct.
If the weather doesn't cooperate for weeks at the beginning of it, it's just that extra month or 3 weeks can really throw things off. Down, so.
Now, you know what? Since I just had a little thought, since I'm talking to you, do you, or I'm sure you'd know, but could you explain just a little bit for the followers and people that are kind of watching my journey, the difference between perhaps leaving, from St. John's, Canada, logistically versus me going from New York, as much as we already covered, the obstacles and difficulties versus really going up from Canada. What are the major differences in, in weather routing and all that stuff?
Yeah, when you leave from Newfoundland or Labrador, that area, and head east, you have a lot less land masses, to worry about further north. And if you're getting pushed north towards Greenland or Iceland, then you're probably not going to be able to make it to the UK.
Right.
But regardless, you have a lot more open water out there. And when the winds out there are typically more varying westerly winds, northwest, west, southwest, so you do get a good push farther east of that. And there's less likely to see those southeasterly swells as well. So a lot of the conditions are from behind you.
Right.
One challenge coming out of there are the icebergs too, because there is too soon from there, because the field is pretty thick to contend with. I mean, it's easier to navigate through with a rowboat than a boat or a cruise ship or something like that. But still, there's still those icebergs that are out there, and they can large challenge. That's one thing you got to worry about more on the northern route, but it is shorter. But leaving in July or August there, you've got about 60 days of, hopefully not much in the way of tropical activity, but, storms and everything. But in New York, you have the challenge of, if you go too soon, you have more fronts and gales coming up in April, early May, although they're starting to weaken. But then you just have all those land masses that are out there. And the longer distance just makes it more difficult to avoid kind of running into those land masses. And you just have to try to find a good window to try to get as far south as you can, get closer to the Gulf Stream. And then if you can get into the Gulf Stream, it is out of the way mileage-wise, but if you can get into the Gulf Stream and there's favorable westerly or even west-southwesterly winds there, then you can get a good ride out of that, move along without trying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's perhaps something to consider or really heavily consider for next year. My route to kind of plot it and try to hit or aim almost, to go southeast from New York to kind of hit for the Gulf Stream earlier if I possibly could. I think it might work, in my favor. So.
Sure. Yep.
Let's see how it works. I mean, something is to plan on paper and something is to accomplish it while you're out there trying to fight the weather, right?
Right. Exactly. Yep. You can prepare and then be aware of the weather systems out there, but then, it just depends on how you handle them and how the conditions are and what the periods of the waves are and, what kind of visibility issues you have. All those factors can all come into it to
100%.
easier or more difficult, the weather factors.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, Jeremy, thank you so much. Unless you have, anything to add, I think we covered pretty much everything. I want to thank you again, for great help, your company, and I'm looking forward to work with you and cooperate again next year on my trip. And thank you. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's great working with you as well. Take care.
All right. Awesome.